Hey, what's up guys? Hugs, not drugs. Sorry it's been a minute since I made a video. I just haven't felt like making one. I've just been kind of unmotivated lately. But I do have good news. I'm going to be featured on Touching the Afterlife, my testimony about how I got healed, the supernatural encounter that changed my life. I'm pretty stoked about it because even though I've already done the testimony, I just pressed record on my camera and I started going. Like, she's actually going to edit it and, and make it good. And I've always, ever since I got healed in 2014, I've always wanted to make a really good testimony video. And even though I think the one I made is good, like I said, I just winged it. I just pressed record and I went with it. Like, I really, for this one, I'm gonna make study notes and try to put in every single detail that I can remember of the dream, because there are things that I either didn't elaborate on or maybe I didn't speak about. So I want to get really in depth in this interview, so that it can inspire people and encourage people to be closer to Jesus. So I'm stoked about that. I'm doing the interview in June, so it's probably going to be featured in late June, maybe July. I don't know exactly when. I'll keep you guys posted. But since I just got done watching Touching the Afterlife, and it was about a suicide story, and so I decided I'm going to make a video about my suicide. I guess I didn't really attempt it. I was going to attempt it, but there's been times in my life, I think there's been times in everybody's life where they've thought about ending it. Like, well, this is the closest I really got, and I was this close to actually doing it. There's some people, oh yeah, I was gonna do, no, like this, I shouldn't say other people, but there are times in my life where I say like, oh yeah, I thought about, I was in prison, and I thought about it when I was in prison, but I never made plans, I never put it into effect. This is about a time where I was like, I put it into effect, I was gonna do it if certain circumstances laid their foundations out. Thank God they didn't. But so at about the age of 12, I started getting under high amounts of stress. That high amounts of stress ended up causing acne. And when I would get the acne, I would have these little whiteheads. They weren't like your typical pimple where it's big, red, puffy. Like, with me, it was a little whitehead from stress, and I'd pop it, and let's just say I didn't pop it, it would be gone by the end of the day or when I woke up the next morning. So that's how I knew it wasn't like an actual pimple. Like, a real pimple will stay on your face for a few days or a week. These were just like I call them stress bubbles, whiteheads that appear when I'm under massive amounts of stress. So I would get these and I would pop them, and then after I'd pop them, the skin would break. And then I naturally have oily and dry skin. So then when my skin would get dry, it would kind of get flaky. And so since I was always popping these whiteheads, my skin always got dry and flaky. So I would buy, the Noxzema pads or the Oxy pads, the little circular alcohol swabs, whatever you want to call them. Back when I was a kid, everybody used them. Now I don't know if they use them as much, but so I would take those and I would rub them all over my face, and I would scrape the dead skin and blackheads off of my face. And now I know how to control my face and control my stress to where I don't break out as much, and I know how to practice proper hygiene. But back then I didn't. Like I said, I was 12, 13. I'd run into people at school and they'd say, hey, you need to wash your face. Hey, did you wash your face? And I thought, oh, I'm breaking out because my skin is not clean. Therefore, if I wash my face, it'll make this go away. That's not the way it works. But back then I thought that if I washed my face and if I scrubbed it more, then my skin would be clear. No, it never worked. When I started trusting Jesus and lowering my stress is when the acne started going away. But I'm going to get to where I'm going with this. So as I continued to just scrape the dead skin off my face, my skin was already naturally sensitive. So scraping it just made it overly sensitive. So now I've got red, puffy skin. And I'm always like rubbing it and like it's irritated, so I want to touch it. But touching it and rubbing it is even irritating it more. And so therefore I'm putting more chemicals on it. Lotion, because I think lotion will help. Oh, more alcohol pads, and so I'm just damaging my skin. And I have to go to school around tons and tons of people under a microscope, right? And people are just making fun of me like, hey, you didn't wash your face. Hey, you got a zit right there. Hey, can I pop that for you? And like what people thought of me, like, it was like a big deal. Like now, not that big of a deal, but back then it drove me crazy. I wanted to look good and I wanted to look healthy and I wanted to look like Jonathan Taylor Thomas, from Tool Time, Home Improvement, like I would, and other classmates had clear skin. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why don't I have clear skin like everybody else? And it drove me crazy, man. Because let's just say there's 500 kids in school. I had the worst acne in school, for sure. Like the worst. There might have been a couple kids that actually, now there were a few kids, but they got them like on their cheeks, like me. I just everywhere. I'm talking like under my eyelids, in my nose, over my nose, on the tip of my nose. It was like the worst place to have a pimple on the tip of your nose and then have a cluster of them. And then it's bleeding. And then I have to go to school like looking like this. It was so terrible. And so then I start skipping school. Then my parents are mad at me for skipping school. Whoa, why don't you want to go to school? And I was so embarrassed. I didn't want to say, because people were making fun of me. I didn't like talking about it. But deep down inside, I just was so embarrassed of the way that I looked. And I would go and I'd look in the mirror, and every time I would look in the mirror, I would literally I'd feel like I wanted to throw up because I looked so bad. My skin looked so bad. And not just that, it looked so bad compared to everybody else. Like I was so puffy, red, and disgusting. And I was small, weak, and just didn't have any friends. Like it's not fun when life is like that. But that's the way it was. And as I got older, until about 17, 18, it still got progressively worse. And this is when the encounter happened. So I had started doing at first I started drinking, and when I was drinking, the drinking would loosen me up to where I didn't care as much about what people thought. I knew that I looked bad, but when I was drinking, I didn't really care what people thought. And so I would drink to get that feeling of just not caring. And then I noticed if I took benzos, Klonopins, then I definitely didn't care what people thought. And then I would also mix it with Sudafed, which it was the maximum strength. Back then they had the ephedrine in it. And so when I would take the ephedrine, it would take the red puffy skin, and it has some sort of inflammation properties in the Sudafed, and it would bring down the puffiness and the redness. It would turn it to paleness. And I remember when I would take those pills and I'd go to work or I'd go to school, people would say, hey, you look good today. Hey, what happened? Yeah, you do something different? No, I just took a massive handful of pills and it brought down I never told anybody this, but that's what was going on. And it's not that I wanted to take a bunch of pills, but it worked with bringing the redness and the swelling down of my face. and people thought I looked better, and I did. I looked better, and people would notice it. So I kept taking them, which kept me in the cycle of using drugs and doing things to make myself feel better. And you guys know my story. It got out of control. But so I'm in Portland, Maine. This is when I was I had already graduated. I was in college. I was 19 at the time. This was right before I came to California. And I had shacked up with some people from college. We were all going to Southern Maine. Back then it was called SMTC, Southern Maine Technical College. And so these were all classmates from the college, and we had all pooled our money together and rented this 2-bedroom apartment. There was about 6 or 7 of us living in this apartment. We're all like 19, 20, 21. And this was about the point where I'd started doing harder drugs. I had experimented a little bit with heroin, but I noticed, my dealer, that's right, my dealer that sold weed started selling, what are those things called? Methadone, yeah. So my dealer started selling methadone wafers. And methadone wafers, he started selling the pills, which are 10 milligrams. But eventually he started selling methadone wafers. Methadone wafers is 1 pill, and it's 40 milligrams of methadone. I'll tell you, when I took that 40-gram methadone wafer, oh my goodness, that made me feel so good. I was social. My skin looked different because I took the stress away, so my skin just kind of like, my skin looked better. And man, that methadone really made me feel good. And so since it was helping, I kept taking it. But the thing about the methadone is it gave me courage to do things that I wouldn't normally do. And I had just recently gotten my second DUI. So I got my first DUI when I was 18. I had just gotten my license. 4 months later, I crashed into a tree from drinking in Clonopins. I was at a party, and my friend asked me for a ride home. I didn't want to do it. I let them drive my car, and I took my car and I drove back to the party. I crashed into a tree right when I got to the party at the street. The house was on that street. I crashed right before I got there. So I lost my car. I ended up getting a job at a restaurant and ended up buying another Ford. I crashed a Ford Tempo. I ended up buying another Ford Tempo for $500, getting insurance on it through my roommate I was living in the dorms. My roommate at the college, we put it under his insurance. So I had a car and I had the insurance under his name. So if a cop got behind us, it would show a 19-year-old kid, valid insurance. And that was the way I had it worked out. But I'm getting more and more depressed because life's just not going too good. I'm spending all my money on drugs, and I'm just not happy with my life, and I'm not living for Christ, okay? I still am a Christian. I believe in God, but God is not first in my life. I'm not relying on Him. I've kind of pushed God away, and I've relied on substances more than God at this point, which is a very bad idea, guys. And I'm living at this apartment with these college guys, and I had been drinking all night. I don't remember how long I had been drinking, but I was on a binger, okay? Let's just say a week. Like, I don't remember exactly how long, but I had been drinking for a long time. And so I had taken the methadone wafer, and the brakes had started going on my car. And so I didn't like to drive too much. I tried to only drive to where I needed to drive. If I had to go somewhere, have an appointment, or if I had to go to work, I would just drive to work, because I had no stopping power. If a car braked in front of me, I had to have a lot of space to brake, because I couldn't stop on a dime. So I'm trying to get home, lost. So I remember I'm at this house. and I had this Chinese food scam that I used to pull. So where we lived was an apartment building, but there was also like 10 other apartments all bunched up. So you have one apartment complex here, and they all looked the same. They all had like 50 apartments in them. And so we lived in one building, and so what I would do is I'd order Chinese food to the building next door, and some of the buildings had open back doors. So what I would do is I'd go in through the back door, I'd order Chinese food to one of the next door buildings, and then when the Chinese food guy came, I would go and open up the front door, which also locked. You know, the front door that locked, and then if you walked in, then you could go through the different apartments, but the front door locked. So when he would come in, I'd go to the front door, and I'd say, what's the total? He'd say, 75. I'd say, okay, 75. I'd say, all right, let me see. I'd say, all right, let me grab the money. So I'd grab the food, I'd shut the door would lock, so he'd be stuck there. And then I'd act like I'm going to my apartment, and then I'd dip out the back door, run to our apartment, and we'd all eat. And yeah, and I did it all the time. Well, the next door neighbors, apparently I did it to the neighbor's house, and they had like underage drinkers there, because I would just give some random, I'd say it's apartment number 7, and so like they called the Chinese food place, called the cops go to apartment 7, the cops are like, where's the Chinese food? And the guys are like, what are you talking about, Chinese food? We don't got Chinese food. The cops are like, well, you let us inside because we think you stole some Chinese food. And so obviously the guys didn't steal any Chinese food. Like, yeah, come on in, officer. We don't have no Chinese food in here. What are you talking about? You see any wontons on the table? So the cops go in. They don't see any Chinese food. They say, oh, we see some beer cans here. Let me see everybody's ID. So boom, they get busted for underage drinkers because not everybody's 21. And these were football players from the University of Southern Maine. I didn't know that at the time. Big jack dudes on the football team. Well, they found out what I was doing, what apartment I was in. So the next time they saw me doing it, they caught me, and they went over to my roommates, because they knew some of my roommates. They let my roommates know what I was doing, because I didn't tell my roommates that I was stealing it. And so my roommates came together in unison, and they all decided that it was time for me to go, and I had to leave the apartment, and they said, all right, you need to go. And I was ready to put up a fight, and these dudes were ready to beat the living crap out of me. Like they wanted me to just like put up a fight, because they were ready to hurt me. They didn't really like me to begin with. Yeah, guys, I'm lost, so I'm pulling over. Somebody was just beeping at me. I'm trying to do two things at once. Sorry. Yeah, so I get kicked out of this apartment, and I got my car there, and like I said, I didn't like driving it, and I had been drinking and doing methadone. And I remember when they kicked me out, I was so just at the end of my wits. I was at the end of my rope, and I didn't have anywhere to go. Like, I couldn't go to my dad's, I couldn't go to my aunt's. I didn't have any friends except for the ones that were in the apartment with me. So like, I'm just like, I'm done, right? And like I forgot to tell you, I had gotten so I crashed my car once. I had gotten a second DUI, and it was still pending to go to court. So I got my first DUI, second one, which is pending. I have a court date set, and I knew I was fit, because at the time they were hitting people hard with these DUI sentences. So I knew that I'm facing the second DUI, and I knew that I had to drive my car away from this party because I couldn't stay there. And I knew if I get hit with a third DUI, they are going to smoke me. Like, so back then in 2002, 2001, if you were getting a third DUI, especially in like a small time frame, they were smoking you. I was definitely going to get maybe 1-2 years, definitely not under a year. Because a lot of people were dying from drinking and driving back then. Kids were. So I know I would have at least gotten 1 or 2 years. So I'm like, all right, if I get pulled over, like I'm going to prison, and I'm scared. I'm 19 years old. I can't go to prison. So I remember, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to my aunt's house. I'm going to see if my aunt will let me stay there. And so I get in my car and I'm crying. I'm so just emotionally devastated. And I said to myself, and keep in mind, guys, this is like, it was late. It was either like 12, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. I want to say around 2 in the morning. Yeah. And at those times of night, the cops are just looking for people to bust. And I know this. So I'm like, I'm going to risk it. I'm going to drive to my aunt's house, which is about 25 minutes from here. And I'm like, if a cop gets behind me and puts on his blue lights, I'm going to run from the cop, and I'm going to find an area where I can step on it, get up to about 80 miles an hour. And when I get to 80 miles an hour, I am crashing this thing head first into a telephone pole. And that was my plan. I was going to crash it right into a freaking telephone pole. And I remember I'm parked out here outside Warner Brothers Studios. They got massive security. This might be Fox Studios. Anyways, it says no parking. I'm going to park here so I can finish the video. So I get in my car, and I'm like, if a cop gets behind me, I'm not going to face the music. There's no way I'm going to prison. I can't do it. I'm going to floor it. And when I can see that I got a clear view, and I said my prayers. I said, God, I said, please forgive me of my sins. I said, Lord, you know how I've dealt with this emotional roller coaster that I've been on about my skin and just not fitting in and just being a wreck. Lord, if I take my life tonight, please just remember me when I die. Please don't let me go to hell. And, I don't know if I would have died, if God, how merciful God is in those situations. I don't want to find out. I know God is a merciful God, but he's also a holy God, and he takes sin very seriously. And to kill myself is to not trust in him. And, so I don't know. And I would never, and I can't give a definitive answer. Like it doesn't say in the Bible, like, I don't know. But, so I got in my car, and I remember driving past a cop, and then he passed me, and I look, and I'm just like, all right, he didn't turn around. But yeah, I ended up driving to my aunt's house. She ended up letting me in. And I ended up shortly after that, because I had nowhere to go. My friend Ken, he had a condo. His mom had let him use a condo, and Ken let me stay there for 2 weeks, but there was like stipulations. I had to leave, and like I wasn't allowed to stay there. And so I remember being at Ken's house, figuring out a way to get to California. And so I ended up, after Ken's house, like a couple weeks after this, I ended up coming to California, and really worked things out when I got to California. I met this guy, and I believe this was from God. He was a surfer guy, and he said, dude, you ever tried aloe vera? I was like, what's aloe vera? He's like, we surfers, we use it for our skin, because we're always in the sun. He's like, yeah, here, why don't you try some? And I believe aloe vera was a gift from God. Aloe is what they put on Jesus during his burial. And so I started using aloe vera on my skin, and it just it was like what I'd been missing my whole life. Like, I wish I would have known about aloe vera back then, because my skin's too sensitive to lotion. So if I use a little bit of the aloe vera gel and I put it on, it doesn't inflame my skin. It actually soothes it, and it heals it. Like, it really healed my skin. I've been using aloe vera ever since then. That was 2003 or 2002. I've been using aloe vera now for 20 years, and it's been working for 20 years. Yeah, definitely a gift from God. But yeah, guys, so I'll keep you updated on the touching the afterlife thing. I hope you like this video. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. Like, if you guys have ever felt like that, if you guys ever had acne, or, you know, what it made it feel like to you. Like, am I the only one that, like, where it just took over my entire life? Let me know. All right, guys, hugs, not drugs. Palabra.